Shalom, 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 Israel. This is Captain Paul Israel from Kingdom Builders of Israel, LLC. And today's class topic is going to be on Yahweh is the God of the Hebrew Israelites, Biblical Proof, Part 2. Again, Israel, today's class topic is going to be on Yahweh is the God of the Hebrew Israelites, Biblical Proof, Part 2. So Israel, get out a pen and notepad because this is going to be a continuation in the understanding of this series that we are presenting on this channel. Okay, so let's get started. So we're going to start out in the book of Psalms, chapter 147, verse 19, to prove that Yahweh is the God of the Hebrew Israelites, biblical proof, understanding. So the person that wrote the book of Psalms was King David. And King David is bringing out the understanding on the role of the Hebrew Israelites based upon the instructions that Yahweh gave to only the children of Israel to do throughout their generation after they had received those commandments in the wilderness. So now King David is bringing out history and the understanding from the time that Yahweh gave those commandments to be given to the children of Israel after they left out of Egypt. So this is the understanding that Yahweh, in that context, when the children of Israel was in their wilderness, he was personally dealing with the children of Israel from then on. So this is the book of Psalms, chapter 147, verse 19. He showeth his word unto Jacob, his statutes and his judgments unto Israel. So King David is bringing out the understanding that Yahweh only showed his word to the Hebrew Israelites. And this is why King David had to bring out the understanding that Jacob, who was a descendant of Abraham, but King David had to bring out the understanding that Jacob, who was the patriarch or the forefather of the Hebrew Israelites, he had to bring out the understanding to explain it two different times. Because Jacob is getting to the understanding of the Hebrew Israelites, but it's also going in line with Jacob being the forefather of the Hebrew Israelites, those 12 tribes. As you can see, the understanding. So also King David used Israel. So he had to explain it two times because you'll have the Gentile nations, they'll try to classify themselves as being a part of being Israelites based upon them being spiritual Israel. But as you can see, there's no such thing as being spiritual Israel in this Bible. So this is why King David had to use in the context Jacob first, then he moved to Israel to establish that he is talking about the Hebrew Israelites only, because you don't get all nations from Jacob, as you can see. So he's explaining in the context that Yahweh only showed his word to the Hebrew Israelites. That's what it's just explaining when they was what? In that wilderness of understanding. So King David is making it crystal clear here. As you can see, we're going to read the next verse. Psalms chapter 147, verse 20. He have not dealt so with any nation, and as for his judgments, they have not known them. Praise ye Yahweh. Whoa, wait a minute. You see this, Israel? So again, King David specified that Yahweh is not dealing with the Gentile nations like that. Okay? Yahweh did not show the Gentile nations his righteousness as far as those commandments. Yahweh showed his righteousness, which is going into those commandments, to only the children of Israel, dealing with the old covenant understanding. And it says, and as for his judgments, they have not known them. Meaning the penalty of the Gentile nations not following Yahweh's commandments. Guess what? The Gentile nations did not face the penalty of breaking Yahweh's commandments under the old covenant. The only ones that paid the penalty for breaking the laws and commandments from the old covenant was the children of Israel, the Hebrew Israelites. That's why King David had to make it crystal clear. Because when the children of Israel break Yahweh's law, statutes, and commandments, they become cursed people. So when the children of Israel break Yahweh's law, statutes, and commandments, the children of Israel are the ones that feels the pain or the penalty or feel the curses generational throughout many years based upon them transgressing against Yahweh's law, statutes, and commandments under the old covenant understanding. The Gentile nations don't feel the pain. They're not going through the trial and tribulations. Why? Because Yahweh did not give the Gentile nations his law, statutes, and commandments from the old covenant. Yahweh did not give the Gentile nations the old covenant understanding. Point blank period. That's what it's explaining. Okay, so this is a cut to you Christians that's trying to graft yourself in the old covenant understanding. You're not a part of the old covenant understanding. Yahshua the Mashiach didn't have to die on the cross for you because you was not under the penalty under the old covenant. You was not under that understanding. Only the Hebrew Israelites were under the penalty under the old covenant understanding. This makes it crystal clear. So Yahshua the Mashiach, in this understanding, right, is only going to be what? A sacrifice to atone for the sins for the children of Israel, based upon the children of Israel being the only ones that was given Yahweh's word of understanding. When you go to the book of Psalms chapter 147 verse 19, it says this: He showeth his word unto Jacob. Yahweh showeth his word unto Jacob, and his statutes and his judgments unto Israel. Point blank period. There is no confusion here. But the confusion comes through those religions. The religions are trying to graft themselves under the old covenant understanding. When they are not a part of the old covenant understanding. Point blank period. That's why King David had to bring it out. He have not dealt so with any nation. Yahweh has not dealt so with any nation dealing with that old covenant of law, statutes, and commandments. Yahweh is basically only dealing with the Hebrew Israelites, as you can see. So let's go to this next prophet of understanding, prophesying the understanding even more crystal clear on who Yahweh is dealing with. And Yahweh, of course, is the God of the Hebrew Israelites. Point blank period. Amos chapter 3 verse 1. And Amos was a prophet of the Most High. He gonna speak, thus saith the Most High, in righteousness and in truth. It says this: Hear this word that Yahweh has spoken against you, O children of Israel, against the whole family which I brought up from the land of Egypt, saying. So you see this? So you see what Amos is explaining to the children of Israel. That Yahweh is speaking through Amos the prophet and explaining to Amos to prophesy against the children of Israel. Because the children of Israel were the ones that Yahweh brought up out of Egypt. Okay? That's the understanding. Yahweh was the one that brought up the Israelites from out of the land of Egypt. That's what it's explaining. So the context is only a conversation between Yahweh speaking through the prophet Amos to talk to the Hebrew Israelites. This has nothing to do with those Gentile nations, as you can see. Amos chapter 3 verse 2. Amos chapter 3 verse 2. You only have I known of all the families of the earth. Therefore I will punish you for all your iniquities. Whoa, 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 wait a minute. You see this, Israel? So now Yahweh speaking through Amos the prophet and giving him the understanding to basically give a message to the Hebrew Israelites to make it crystal clear that Yahweh, the God of the Israelites, right? Yahweh is the God of the Israelites, and to explain to the Hebrew Israelites that he's personally punishing the children of Israel, because out of all the nations that Yahweh created, Yahweh is personally dealing with the Hebrew Israelites based upon them breaking his laws, right? Because the law, statutes, and commandments under the old covenant was given to the children of Israel. So they are the ones that have that covenant or bond agreement between Yahweh. This has nothing to do with the Gentile nations. As you can see, you only have I known of all the families of the earth. So Yahweh is explaining through the prophet Amos that, hey, out of all the nations that I created, I'm dealing with you, you children of Israel. So you Hebrew Israelites, you need to get out of that religion state of mind. Yahweh is judging you personally as a Hebrew Israelite because why? You was given that covenant agreement based upon them law, statutes, and commandments. The Gentile nations were not given the law, statutes, and commandments. So that's why they're not under the curses of Deuteronomy 28. They're not under those curses. You are under these curses, you children of Israel, you blacks, Hispanics, and Native Americans, and also our people that scattered abroad to the four corners of the earth. You are under those curses because you are under the laws of Moses. It says this, therefore I will punish you for all your iniquities. So that's why you wonder why you children of Israel are exceeding in judgments in the earth, right? You have the crime at an all-time high. You have the worst health conditions, right? You have the worst family stability situation, right? You have children out of wedlock at a high alarming rate, right? You don't know how to build families because you under the generational curses. Because you operating out of lust, which is sin, according to the Bible. This is why you rate the highest in HIV and STD cases, you children of Israel. Because you're rejecting the commandments. This is why you filling up them prison systems or them jail cells, you children of Israel, because you are under the curses of Deuteronomy 28. Yahweh is judging you because you're breaking his law, statutes, and commandments. So you're going to go through the generational curses on judgments, being a cursed people at an alarming rate more than the other nations. Why? Because Yahweh gave you his laws to keep throughout your generation. But you, children of Israel, are choosing to be wicked. You are choosing to follow the Gentile customs and ways. Yahweh say, I'm judging you of all your iniquities. So you children of Israel, while you worried about the Gentile nations, you need to be worried about yourself. Because you're getting the judgment all throughout the earth. That's why final destination things happen to you, you children of Israel, because you're not applying the commandments of the Most High. So as you can see, Amos the prophet was warning the children of Israel even in his time. Also, this can be applied for today. The warning is sent out based upon reading the prophet's understanding and when they was conversating, with the children of Israel. So now we go to the book of the Apocrypha, and we're going to prove again that Yahweh is the God of the Hebrew Israelites. Okay, so we're going to go to the book of the Apocrypha, and we're going to get the understanding from Ezra the prophet, who is going by this understanding as Esdras, because Esdras is the Greco-Latin name of Ezra, the prophet from the Old Testament. So we're going to go to the book of the Apocrypha. So we're going to get the understanding on why Yahweh is the God of the Hebrew Israelites. 2nd Ezra chapter 6 verse 54. It says this, and after these Adam also, whom thou madest Lord of all thy creatures, of him come we all, and the people also whom thou hast chosen. You see this, Israel? So Ezra the prophet is explaining that yes, the creation that's on this earth at this present time, yes, we are all descendants coming out of Adam, right? But out of Adam, Yahweh chose a particular people out from Adam to be what? Personally dealing with, right? Yahweh chose a particular nation of people to personally deal with from that line or lineage from Adam, right? That's what it says, and the people also whom thou hast chosen. So now Ezra the prophet is separating the rest of the nations that came out of Adam to another nation to basically explain that Yahweh is personally dealing with a particular nation out of the seed line of Adam. Okay. And we're going to get the understanding who this chosen people are, and this understanding that Yahweh has chose, and this understanding in the book of 2nd Ezra chapter 6 verse 54. It says this in the understanding in the book of Psalms chapter 135 verse 4, which King David is going to reiterate who Yahweh chosen people are. Let's read Psalms chapter 135 verse 4. For Yahweh hath chosen Jacob unto himself, and Israel for his peculiar treasure. Whoa, wait a minute. You see this, Israel? It says, for Yahweh hath chosen Jacob unto himself, and Israel for his peculiar treasure. So notice King David had to explain it in two different times, Jacob and Israel. Why he had to do it two times? Because we have Gentile nations. They are trying to graft themselves as claiming to be Hebrew Israelites. Or they are claiming that they're spiritual Israel. No. It's explaining specifically those descendants that come out of Jacob's lineage line, which makes those 12 tribes, right? So that's what so basically this is what this is getting into, that Yahweh chose those 12 tribes of Israel to be his chosen people. Point blank, period. And as you can see, there's no mention of the Gentile nations in this understanding. Like I said, the religion world just keeps teaching lies. So let's go back to the understanding. 2nd Ezra chapter 6 verse 54. And after these Adam also, whom thou madest Lord of all thy creatures, of him come we all, and the people also whom thou hast chosen. So now we know where it says, and the people also whom thou hast chosen. That's going into the Hebrew Israelites, right? The descendants of Jacob. Because we just read it in the book of Psalms chapter 135 verse 4 that Yahweh chosen Jacob, the Hebrew Israelites, which is going to Israel. As you can see, the Bible doesn't contradict itself. So now we're going to go to the next verse in the book of 2nd Ezra chapter 6 verse 55 in the book of the Apocrypha to continue the understanding. It says this: all this have I spoken before thee, O Yahweh, because thou madest the world for our sakes. Whoa, wait a minute. You see this? You see this, Israel? So Ezra the prophet is letting it be known, right? That, hey, Yahweh, you created the world, or created the whole planet Earth, right? For our sakes, for the Hebrew Israelites' sakes. Because it was already established that Yahweh had a chosen people who were the Hebrew Israelites in the book of 2nd Ezra chapter 6 verse 54. Now, when we go back to this understanding, so now we know the context that the chosen people that Yahweh is dealing with is only the Hebrew Israelites. So now Ezra the prophet is saying, hey, you made us the world, or you made the whole earth for the Hebrew Israelites' sakes. That's what it's saying. Notice Ezra the prophet is not concerning himself with the Gentile nations. As you can see, the Gentile nations is not used in this context. The context is the Hebrew Israelites. Point blank period. 2nd Ezra chapter 6 verse 56. Now this is going into the context of the other nations, or those Gentile nations of the other nations. Okay? So this is the understanding. This is what a lot of people want to know. Okay, so what about the other nations? What about them? What's their purpose on earth? Okay, what's their role then if Yahweh is only dealing personally with the Hebrew Israelites, right? Like, what's the role of the Gentile nations, right? So we're going to get the understanding that Ezra the prophet is going to let it be known that Yahweh does not care about the Gentile nations like that. Okay, we're going to prove that understanding that the Gentile nations are nothing to the Most High. Okay, this is the understanding. 2nd Ezra chapter 6 verse 56. As for the other people, that's talking about the Gentile nations, of the other nations. As for the other people, which also come of Adam, thou hast said that they are nothing, but be like unto spittle, and has likened the abundance of them unto a drop that falleth from a vessel. Whoa, wait a minute. You see this, Israel? So Ezra the prophet is letting me know that Yahweh does not care nothing about the Gentile nations, because Ezra the prophet is going to speak thus saith the Most High, right? So Ezra the prophet is letting it be known that Yahweh does not care about the Gentile nations like that. As for the other people, let's talk about those Gentile nations, which also come of Adam, because the Gentile nations of today come out of Adam's seed line. Thou hast said that they are nothing. They are nothing. Meaning Yahweh does not care about the Gentile nations like that. But be like unto spittle. So they are equivalent to like spit coming out of somebody's mouth that goes onto the ground. That's how Yahweh feel about the other nations when you compare the Gentile nations to the Hebrew Israelites. As you can see, the Gentile nations have a purpose on the earth, but their purpose on the earth is not to be above the Hebrew Israelites. Okay? So the Hebrew Israelites are supposed to be above all nations on the face of the earth. So Yahweh looks at the Hebrew Israelites as his peculiar people. He looks at the Gentile nations as a nation of people that's below the children of Israel. That's the understanding in this context. But be like unto spittle. So the Gentile nations are a low race of people. That's what it's establishing. And has likened the abundance of them unto a drop that falleth from a vessel. So just like a water drop that falls from a bucket and it falls onto the ground, an average person is not going to care about a drop that falleth from a bucket. If they're carrying a bucket and some of the water fall over and hit the ground, the person's not going to, oh, let me go back and get the drop of water that fell on the ground. No. They're not going to try to do that. They're going to keep it moving. That's the equivalent on how Yahweh feel about those Gentile nations. He's not really caring about them like that. Yahweh cares about the Hebrew Israelites. And that's why Yahweh saved the Hebrew Israelites from Egypt. Right? Because Yahweh cared about the Hebrew Israelites. That's why you go through all them different kingdoms of rulership. Yahweh only redeemed the children of Israel out of bondage because Yahweh is personally dealing with the Hebrew Israelites, as you can see in this context. Okay? So yes, Yahweh loves the Hebrew Israelites so much to the point where he's not really caring about the Gentile nations like that. Because we have Hebrew Israelites that love the Gentile nations more than their own people. So that's going off, right? You Hebrew Israelites are supposed to love your people more than the Gentile nations. See, you Hebrew Israelites are supposed to show love to your neighbor as you're supposed to love yourself. That's showing the righteous understanding towards your people. And that's how you show love to the Most High, by loving your own people. So this is the understanding in 2 Ezra chapter 6 verse 56 that Yahweh does not care about the other nations like that. Isaiah chapter 41 verse 8. So we're going to go to the book of Isaiah chapter 41 verse 8 to prove again that Yahweh is the God of the Hebrew Israelites. Isaiah chapter 41 verse 8. And again, Isaiah was a prophet of the Most High. And guess what? He's going to teach truth. He's going to be speaking Yahweh's words of understanding, because Yahweh's spirit was in prophet Isaiah. Isaiah chapter 41 verse 8. But thou, Israel, art my servant, Jacob, whom I have chosen, the seed of Abraham, my friend. Whoa, wait a minute. You see this, Israel? So as you can see, the prophets are saying the same thing, that the Israelites are Yahweh's chosen people. You don't see no mention of the Gentile nations used in none of these contexts. But thou, Israel, art my servant. So again, Isaiah is saying the Israelites two different times. So he said, Israel, art my servant. And also he's saying Jacob, whom I have chosen, to specify that it's explaining that the ones that are chosen by Yahweh are the descendants of Jacob. Because you cannot get all nations from Jacob. So it's specifying one nation of people who are the children of Israel as being Yahweh's chosen people, based upon them being from that seed line of Abraham, who was a friend of the Most High. That's what it's explaining in its understanding in Isaiah chapter 41 verse 8. So let's continue. Isaiah chapter 41 verse 9. Thou whom I have taken from the ends of the earth, and called thee from the chief men thereof, and said unto thee, Thou art my servant, I have chosen thee, and not cast thee away. Whoa, wait a minute. You see this? It says, thou whom I have taken from the ends of the earth and called thee from the chief men thereof. So Yahweh is calling the Hebrew Israelites his chosen ones out of all the nations that he created, and said unto thee, thou art my servant. So Yahweh is explaining through the prophet Isaiah that the Hebrew Israelites are Yahweh's servant. That the Hebrew Israelites are supposed to be what? Honoring the Most High by keeping his law, statutes, and commandments outside of all those other Gentile nations that he created. No matter where the Hebrew Israelites are located on this earth, they supposed to be keeping Yahweh's law, statutes, and commandments. That's what it's explaining. Thou whom I have taken from the ends of the earth, because the Hebrew Israelites are scattered through the four corners of the earth, and called thee from the chief men thereof. So the chief men thereof is talking about those Gentile nations, rulership kingdoms. So Yahweh is establishing through the spirit of Isaiah that, hey, I chose you, you Hebrew Israelites, to be my people outside of all those nations that had kingdoms on the earth. Thou art my servant. So the Hebrew Israelites are the servants of the Most High. I have chosen thee and not cast thee away. So Yahweh explained through prophet Isaiah that he has not cast away the children of Israel. Contrary to what the Christian faith is talking about. Contrary to the Muslims or what they're teaching, that Yahweh cast the Israelites away. No, that's a lie. As you can see, Yahweh is explaining through the spirit of Isaiah that he has not cast the Hebrew Israelites away. Point blank, period. So if any religion is telling you that Yahweh is no longer dealing with the Hebrew Israelites like that, that is a lie. As you can see in his understanding. And not cast thee away. Yahweh has not cast the Hebrew Israelites away. So you Christians and Muslims, y'all need to stop lying on this Bible. We're going to let this Bible be true and every man a liar. Yahweh has not cast his people away. That's what the Bible says. Isaiah chapter 41 verse 10. Okay, Isaiah chapter 41 verse 10. Fear thou not, for I am with thee. Be not dismayed, for I am thy Elohim. I will strengthen thee. Yea, I will help thee. Yea, I will uphold thee with the right hand of my righteousness. You see this, Israel? So Yahweh said through the Spirit, through Isaiah, hey, tell the children of Israel to fear not. Right? Yahweh is the true God. Right? Yahweh is the Elohim of the Hebrew Israelites. That's what it's basically explaining, that he's going to strengthen the Hebrew Israelites. How is Yahweh going to strengthen the Hebrew Israelites? He's going to strengthen the Hebrew Israelites by helping the Hebrew Israelites, by giving them the understanding on how to live right according to the Bible. Yahweh is going to instruct the children of Israel by what? Raising up the prophets, right? Raising up the prophets to teach the Hebrew Israelites how to get right with him by learning his righteousness, right? It says this, I will uphold thee with the right hand of my righteousness. The righteousness is Yahweh's law, statutes, and commandments. Yahweh has risen up the prophets in today's time, right, to raise up the understanding of Yahweh's righteousness by what? Teaching the children of Israel Yahweh's law, statutes, and commandments in these last days, so they can be what? So they can be saved in the end. Because they what? Repented as a Hebrew Israelite. So that's how Yahweh is helping the children of Israel. He's using the prophets of today to teach the Hebrew Israelites Yahweh's law, statutes, and commandments. That's what is explaining in this context in the book of Isaiah chapter 41 verse 10. No matter what generation the children of Israel come to the earth, Yahweh always raised up prophets to teach the children of Israel his righteousness, which is going to those commandments, which ultimately helped the children of Israel get out of bondage or captivity based upon the Hebrew Israelites repenting as Hebrew Israelites in the right spirit. So now we got the understanding that Yahweh is helping the children of Israel by what? Giving them the Hebrew Israelite understanding. Isaiah chapter 41 verse 11 is going to get to the point of the understanding of a similar understanding that Ezra the prophet was saying earlier, that the Gentile nations are nothing. Isaiah the prophet is going to say the same thing in Isaiah chapter 41 verse 11, that the Gentile nations are nothing. It says this right here, Isaiah chapter 41 verse 11. Behold, all they that were incensed against thee shall be ashamed and confounded. They shall be as nothing, and they that strive with thee shall perish. Whoa, wait a minute. You see this, Israel? You see the prophets are all saying the same thing. They're all speaking in the same direction of understanding. They're speaking in the correct context of the understanding. There's no confusion here. It said, behold, all they that were incensed against thee. So the word incense in this context is getting into anger or hatred. So it's explaining, behold, all they that were hatred or angry against thee shall be ashamed and confounded. So these Gentile nations who show hatred towards to the children of Israel throughout many different generations, they shall be what? Ashamed and confounded when the Hebrew Israelites are put back in rulership. Because when the Hebrew Israelites are put back in rulership, the Gentile nations are going to feel ashamed, right? They're going to be confounded to realize that all those idol gods they worship was all in vain. They're going to realize, oh, shoot, we shouldn't have treated the Hebrew Israelites like that because they are Yahweh's chosen people. That's what the Gentile nations are going to realize when Yahshua the Mashiach's kingdom is set up on earth. They're going to realize this understanding that the Israelites are Yahweh's chosen people. When the Hebrew Israelites are put back in rulership in the land of Israel. They shall be as nothing. So when the Hebrew Israelites are put back in rulership, the Gentile nations are basically going to be in a position of being a lower class of people. That's what it's explaining. They shall be as nothing. They're going to be considered nobody compared to the Hebrew Israelites, basically. because the Hebrew Israelites are going to be in rulership. So Yahweh's focus is going to be the Hebrew Israelites, right? And the Gentile nations are going to have to serve the Hebrew Israelites. So again, that's the understanding. They shall be as nothing. The Gentile nation shall be as nothing. And they that strive with thee shall perish. The ones that did not want to believe the Hebrew Israelites were the chosen. The ones that was ridiculing the Hebrew Israelites, right? They shall perish, they shall die. The Gentile nation shall die. That's what it's explaining. The ones that's considered nothing, the ones that did not want to acknowledge the children of Israel as being Yahweh's chosen people, they shall perish. Because they were supposed to look at the children of Israel with honor. The Gentile nations were supposed to be looking at the children of Israel with honor. But again, the Gentile nations have been deceived based upon those religions. Okay? Those religions are deceiving a lot of people in this earth. But everything is going to be found out in the end. That's what it's explaining. Isaiah chapter 41 verse 14. Again, is going to prove that Yahweh is the God of the Hebrew Israelites. Isaiah chapter 41 verse 14. Fear not thou worm, Jacob, and ye men of Israel. I will help thee, saith Yahweh, and thy Redeemer, the Holy One of Israel. You see this, Israel? It says, fear not thou worm, Jacob. So when it says worm right here, it's talking about afflicted, or a type of affliction or pain or suffering. Because the Hebrew Israelites in these last days are going through suffering, pain. They struggling to pay bills. They struggling to get help, right? It's hard for them to survive based upon their living conditions, right? Because the children of Israel are at the bottom of society, no matter what society they living in, right? Throughout the four corners of the earth, the children of Israel are considered to be at the bottom. That's why it says, fear not thou worm Jacob, or thou afflicted Jacob, and ye men of Israel. So again, the context is still a conversation with the Hebrew Israelites. I will help thee. So Yahweh is saying it again, that he's going to help the children of Israel, saith Yahweh, because Yahweh is going to help the children of Israel by giving them the understanding about the Hebrew truth. And also Yahweh giving the children of Israel the understanding about his commandments. And thy Redeemer. So, and thy Redeemer. Thy Redeemer is going into what? Yahshua the Mashiach, the Black Messiah. Yahshua the Mashiach is the Redeemer of the Hebrew Israelites in the end times. I will help thee, saith Yahweh, and thy Redeemer. So Yahweh is letting it be known. Yahweh is letting it be known that he's the one that's going to redeem the children of Israel by what? Sending his son, Yahshua the Mashiach, to the earth to redeem the Hebrew Israelites. The ones that repented as a Hebrew Israelite in the right spirit. It says the Holy One of Israel. The Holy One of Israel. Because Yahweh is referred to the one as being the Holy One of Israel. So notice the context. The Holy One of Israel. It did not say the Holy One of all nations. The Holy One of anybody. No, it said the Holy One of Israel. Because the Hebrew Israelites are Yahweh's chosen people. Point blank period. So Yahweh is letting it be known through the spirit of Isaiah that Yahweh is the God of the Hebrew Israelites. As you can see, the understanding. The redemption is for the Hebrew Israelites. That's the prophecy. As you can see, this has nothing to do with religion.